welcome tonight. Good turnout. Thank you for coming. Lovely night, but it's we've got a treat in store here. Before I go any further, I'll just give our apologies from our chair. It's Anna Lily Vandenbroek. She's in Japan, enjoying herself with Anko, I hope, over there. So she deserves a break. She's hard working, so that's where she is. And the next meeting here is in exactly 4 weeks' time, 16th of November, same place, same time. And it's the speaker's Erika Hendricks at the Great Pest Genome Treasure Hunt. The Great Pest Genome Treasure Hunt. One way to improve and refine our pest control efforts is to more deeply understand our invasive species. So this scientist from Lanky Researchers talking about an ambitious research project that looks into the genomes of rats, stoats and possums to identify their Achilles heels. God, I think you've got a true Achilles. So that could really help focus on not only the research but the practical application of pest control. So feel free to come next time. Anybody else got any announcements of things that are coming up? Or? No? Right, okay. I'd like to introduce our speaker then, John, the other one. John Sumich, who's been on the committee for many years, and he is the founder of, initiator really too, as well, of the Ark in the Park. It was his name, his idea. And initiated many projects in the Waitakere, especially in the Waitakere Valley, and one with us and others, one of the trustees of Matuku Link. So John is going to talk about, well, Matuku Link. He's not going to talk about Matuku Link so much, but he's going to talk about the bird that gave the rise to the name, matuku-hurepo, Bittern of the swamp. Thanks, John. Give them my clap.
Okay, thanks, folks. Tonight's going to be a little bit of my personal journey into this bird, but I do acknowledge I've had some very good information from three of the people who in recent times have been doing research on bittern. Harry Cayley from DOC, Emma Williams, and Colin O'Donnell from DOC as well. So I've been given some of the images from some, and I've purloined some of the others that we'll show tonight. But first of all, this is our bird, and there's a stuffed one there. Okay, so just putting it into our context, Matuku Link there in pink, the brown contour there is habitat to Henga that we set up so we could release pāteke. And of course, doing all that, you start to realise there's more birds, other species there, and that's when I first really started to see quite a few matuku. So this then is the map. All those yellow and the red spots are where we put our recorders out. So we're trying to get an idea of what's the number of matuku we have. Although we only can determine, of course, the male by their booming in springtime, September through to perhaps late December. And so that, you know, assumptions are sometimes made that where you hear a male, there might also be a female, not necessarily so. But the booming is both to try and attract a female and to deter a potential rival. And so we've been doing this for several years, not always at the optimum time. So we're hoping to correct that from here on and do it at the time when you might hear most booming. On the other hand, things like flooding and that can severely change what you might hear. We did a survey just 2 weeks ago for the spotless crake, Pueto, and we noted there that there were far fewer calls than we normally get. So their numbers gone down, so it'll be interesting over the next few weeks to see how Matuku, the bittern, has responded to that flooding. So this is representation of one of the recorders we put out. They record early hours of the morning, late hours of the afternoon, evening, and put them out for a couple of weeks or so, bring them back. Takes a while for them to be analysed. By then the breeding season is well over. But you know, year by year, if we try and get information of where our birds are, they often come back to the same general area as their territory. And that's a photo of from three of the birds just down there at Matuku. So you know, we do have them.
Yeah, it's like very rare to see.
Can you see them all? I need 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
A bird that historically sometimes is seen in the hundreds. This is from Emma Williams, her study just showing where bittern are most often seen, and you might say it's a preference, but it's what we see. The birds might actually prefer something else that isn't there. But the highest thing there is matuku-hurepo, and then we go on to flax, we go on to carex, we've got willow unfortunately there, juncus, and then a whole lot of other species going down. But by far and above, you know, the hurepo is the most important vegetation that they're in. So there's one that's not in a hurepo, in some sort of reed. John will tell me what it is.
Probably Macarona.
Probably.
Macarona.
In early 2016, I was having some association with drones, and I thought, well, the only way, a better way to sort of work out where bittern are, because they're reclusive, they're cryptic, hard to see, and because the drone operator I was dealing with had thermal cameras, I thought, why don't we just fly over wetlands and pick up the thermal signature of these bitterns? So after quite a while, when we had to get some funding, we went here to the Waihi estuary. That on the top there is Makatu Peninsula, and there's the beach there, Pukahina Beach, an extensive wetlands there. So midwinter, we set up a drone. We were there in the middle of the night, very, very cold. We were there in the morning. We flew a drone with the thermal cameras, and in the morning we used the drone followed by another drone that had just an optical camera, just to try and go over the same path and see what was what. Doc didn't take that any further until 2021, when they obviously decided it was a good idea and got someone else to do it with the new technology that could send a drone that had both a thermal and an optical camera at the same time. We'd worked out that it's pointless going and hard work going out at 9 or 10 at night. You can get the information you need in the early morning when there's still some light, but the thermal signature of the bird is present. So that's what the drone operator sees. And then that's also what he sees. It's a split screen. Here's the infrared on the left, there's the optical camera. Now, I'll just go to the side. So, the white spot there is the bittern on a nest. That corresponds to this place here, which if I wasn't telling you, probably wouldn't guess it. But you can see perhaps tracks, almost like a tracery, a web. All of those are the routes that the bird takes, goes out the front door sometimes, out the back door others. So you need both of these to work out what's going on. So these were taken simultaneously, okay? The optical, that's what they see, which is nothing, but then that tells you there's a bird there.
Sorry to be rude, how do you know it's a bittern?
Aha, because later on you do other... Okay, now, I hope I've got... All right, now you're going to see something here that probably very few people in this century or even the 1900s have seen. That's bittern mating.
Wow. Good grief. Bruce is getting ideas.
And that's kahu flying over the top.
Area.
That, well, hang on a moment. You can tell me in a moment.
Well, look at that.
Oh. Another one.
That's another bittern.
A voyeur, a
A
voyeur.
voyeur. Now, this, I'll go on to the next. So this is something that probably, you know, in the 1800s, many people would have seen because there were hundreds of the birds around. You know, one of the famous ornithologists went and shot 6 in an afternoon, you know, no trouble. But here we go, here's the mating, a result. I think we've got a chick there as well. Here's mum on the eggs, and it's only the female, of course. Sorry, I can see it. Yeah. Nice fluffy chicks again.
Oh, freaky.
And if we can have the sound here, this is also something that very few people would ever have. Oh, sorry. Hopefully most of you heard that. Yeah. So, you know, not many people would ever have seen anything like that. There it is in Rapo, their preferred habitat. But these birds are nationally critical. There are fewer matuku than 4 of the 5 kiwi species. Estimates 600 to 1,000, and probably less. And that's through the whole country. And there might be 1,000 in Australia, the very same bird. So they're judged, you know, it's got a status of nationally critical. Loss of wetlands. So a bird that was in the hundreds was when we had, we've currently got about 8% of the wetlands that were present pre-colonial times. So for a bird that is an obligate wetland species, get rid of the wetlands, the numbers are going to get down. The water quality's down. So those of you who've looked at our Waitakere River and you know, it's dirty. So siltation, the effects of the slips and that are usually human generated, our roads and all that, the slips from them, the water that goes there. Flooding, you know, this is going to be an issue with climate change, sedimentation there, willow encroachment, poor food supply. So poor food supply related to their normal species, sometimes being hunted, in the case of eel, sometimes the other fish being predated by some of the pest fish that have been brought in. Disturbance, people going around on motorboats and paths going by ponds, dogs, fire. Down in the Awarua wetlands down in Southland, huge fire took out, you know, great hectareages of that area. Pest fish, so some of the fish disturb the koi carp, disturbing all the sediments at the bottom, and bittern are visual hunters, so they can't see the food. It's a bit hard to feed. The water quality flooding, these are birds that prefer perhaps 15 centimetres of water so that they can spare their fish. And pest fish, and if that's not enough, the usual suspects. Ferrets as well. Cats that do go into wetlands. They don't mind getting their feet wet. Here's that photo you saw before. Look at the top and see the date. Yeah, 4 days later, that nest has been cleared out by Kahu the harrier. So that's being recognised more and more as a significant predator.
So is that only happen when the bird's off the nest? Because would it protect the eggs if it was there?
Probably, but I mean they have to go off to feed.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, of course.
So these birds are cryptic, they're also mobile. How far can they go and why do they go? And to know how far they can go, you've got to track them. So this is a photo of someone setting up a trap. I think you can make out on the right hand side a bit of a wire cage with a bit of camouflage over it there. Okay. So you try to catch your bird first and then put a satellite tag on it. And there's one too with a camera on it, setting it up. You might be able to see that they've got some mesh there to sort of try and get the bird to come in to restrict its route, so it must go into the cage. So these are birds that can fly, 200 or 300 kilometres. So this makes it difficult if you see a bird. We see a bird at Tahinga, the same bird might be seen in the Kaipara or over on the Coromandel the next day. Makes it hard to count how many there are. There's probably double counting because of that. So these are 3 birds that had satellite tags on them, GPS trackers, and those are some of the routes they took, right up north there over to the Bay of Plenty. They were all initially tagged at the Whangamarino wetland there, just north of Hamilton.
What's the time frame, John?
That's, I think, that was over about 2 months there. But some of those daily trips, have been, and some of the ones that they've done down the South Island from Lake Waihora, Ellesmere, all the way up to Glenham, no trouble. Tried to catch the ferry, I think. So there we go. They all look the same, but do they? So at the moment, they're looking into observing these patterns, the front and sometimes the wing, and then using AI to see if consistently you can see what's happening to a particular bird, but using AI to, just like, we're recognising orcas and whales and various other species by patterns and that. These could be well distinctive, but we don't see them often enough, and we need something like AI to sort of help determine whether you're seeing the same bird or different bird. There we go. That apparently is a medium-sized short fin tuna or eel. That's a good feed. But that's the other side of another of the hazards. Road strike, road accidents. Majority of the birds are found to be quite emaciated. So they're often on roadside drains trying to find food, or the frogs or the eel or the other fish are there. They wander on the road. Some of you may have seen them. They just get that posture where they just stand there and say, I can't see you, so you can't see me. But it doesn't work if there's a car coming through. So we know just in the last season, we know of 12 that have been killed on the roads. And of course, those are the ones that are handed in. There may be others. And in a population that might be somewhere between 600 to 1,000, you get, so if we know there's 12, let's double it, say, 20 odd a year lost. That's not good for the population.
John, just notice the green legs rather than yellow of the harrier.
Yep.
I know they're yellowy green, but it's different, and that's one of the things to look for, but don't often see it very easily.
Yeah.
They're very similar in flight.
So this is the thing that we're trying to sort of do at spots where bittern have been hit, and at spots where we anticipate they might be coming low from their wetland, then flying over a road, trying to, will these make a difference to drivers? We hope so. But the other thing is, it takes a bit longer, of course, is to try and have vegetation growing that makes the bird fly up higher before it goes across the road. So those are some of the measures that we're going to try to advocate for. So this is what I set up in 2021 to try and get an idea of the numbers of males, a nationwide survey to try and see if we could at least pick where the males are. The males with their booming, that might represent a breeding site or just a trial site. And I'm steadily getting more and more information from that. But this survey, I'm hoping, will be unnecessary with some of the other steps that are occurring now. The Bittern Conservation Trust, I found that a lot of people are looking at Bittern. You've got regional council, some of them have got an obligation to look after the various threatened species. You've got DOC itself, you've got Birds New Zealand, you've got groups like us. But what was more and more obvious was no one was talking to anyone else. And so I got in touch with 5 or 6 other people from other parts of the country who are doing some serious monitoring work and predator control in their wetland areas. And we've formed a Bittern Conservation Trust. Today was the first face-to-face meeting we've had. So we had people coming from Tutukaka, Coromandel, Bay of Plenty. We zoomed in our Christchurch member. He couldn't afford to come up, but Peter, thank you. So we surveyed a lot of people, individuals, various people from non-governmentals, DOC, etc. And these are the main priorities to, one, raise awareness of Bittern and use consistent monitoring and recording methods, and connect individuals and groups to regional or national organisations for support. So we've already started some of that raising awareness among us people doing talks like this. The regional councils now have an obligation, all of them, to record all the threatened species in their area. So that, but also then we're trying to say, well, that information has got to go to where something can be acted on when you get that information. Consistent monitoring and recording, and that's what I hope us to start. The acoustic recordings we've done here at Matuku, at the Tenga wetland, are just one aspect, but we really should be doing more often, and also including coordinated human hearing to add further elements to it. So that will come up. One of our trustees did a survey last year from Ruakaka down to Pakari, and they picked up 22 booming males. That was 20 people based in all these different wetlands, and so just using these standardised recording methods. So that's a good number of birds. Another thing then has been developed by one of our members here. This is she works for the Conservation Hub, and we've got now an app, a mobile app, that people can record either one-off sightings or hearings. It can be used with the acoustic recording information can go in. It can be used if you've got coordinated listening at a wetland, the different people at different sites might each get an estimate of where the bird they are hearing, its orientation, the compass bearing, distance, then you can start to triangulate and get an idea, a better idea of where that bird is at that time, rather than waiting several months for the acoustic recorder information to be scanned and returned. And you might then, if you say, well, here's a bird at this point, do we know, is there enough predator control around there? So it can give information. This data on this app will go to DOC. We're currently negotiating with eBird and Birds New Zealand. So we're trying to get all the information going into one place and being accessible by whoever has put the data in, and get a bigger nationwide idea of what's happening with this bird.
Have you included iNaturalist as one of iNaturalist as one of the?
Okay, I'm not sure of that one.
Right, okay.
But I mean, iNaturalist collects a whole lot of data. But things like eBird obviously is just for birds.
Yes.
So iNaturalist, you can put vegetation, insects, whatever. So it may be something we need to look at in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking of it more as a place to collect data rather than, they might have sightings on there.
They might, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll go to. So then we've got the lovebittern.com is we put a lot of our stories in. On that you can get the information on the app. You can upload the app from there. A Facebook page, Bittern Conservation. This is Peter Langland, who's now one of our trustees. He's been operating that Facebook page for many years. We now have joint sort of use of it, and so there's a lot that's going on, I think, in the Bittern field, and I think there's a lot more research and data collecting on Bittern because of the acknowledgement that wetlands are important. So people might not be putting as much interested in wetlands, but you have a focus like Bittern, which is, you know, an indicator of a really healthy wetland, and the money and effort might go into that. So I think basically that's how I see Bittern and my involvement with it. And any questions? How long will I take?
If you go back to the first slide,
Yeah.
it showed recording spots.
Yep.
Are some of them, the northernmost ones, are they outside the actual reserve, the Hinga Reserve area or not? I couldn't quite work it out like that.
Oh.
You had the first slide and the second slide. One-
Okay. Oh, indeed. I mean, most of this on private land.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the Matuku Reserve,
Yes.
that's called the wildlife refuge there. Okay, Matuku Reserve is there, Matuku Link beyond, private land here, farmland and private there. So all that's private land. Yeah.
So when you say all that, some of it is the Habitat to Hinga Reserve or not?
There isn't such a thing as a Habitat to Hinga Reserve.
Okay.
No. So.
No, sorry, the previous slide indicated it was.
Well, no, that was just an indication of boundary that we consider within here is where we've got our
Okay,
traps.
I misunderstood the darker yellow.
Okay, yeah. No, so the dark brown line is just an indication of the sort of extent,
No,
the
I mean
outside
the
extent.
area in the middle.
Oh, no, there's 40, 50 houses there. Jenny lives there somewhere. Yeah. So, no, the Habitat to Hinga was set up really getting permissions from landowners, from council, because we also go to council land through here. Some of the traps along here, well, they were before that Tahinga walkway was shut, but that was part, and that's dock, of course. Yeah.
You could say that Habitat to Hinga is a concept and an extent of predator control, whereas the others are all actual sites or reserves or whatever.
Okay.
So it's John's idea, Habitat to Hinga. Yeah.
Yeah. Any,
John, I don't know much about Bittern, so these things nest in the same place each year, roughly?
it's a hard
As far
question
as you
because,
know?
you know, talking to some of the others who have been following us for longer than I have and being able to get an idea of where territories are, it may be close by, not necessarily the same area, but you know,
similar.
a territory is determined obviously by...
And the rest of the year, they're clearly capable of long movement.
Absolutely, yeah.
What are they doing the rest of the year?
Feeding, cruising.
Do they go to the same places each year, or is that known?
Don't know.
Do they
but
aggregate anywhere, congregate?
No, well, no, not these years. I mean, there's
Okay.
only 600 or so, 800 spread throughout the whole country.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. It may well be that they congregated when we had, you know, 9 times as many wetlands around, but don't know. And they might even be more mobile now than they used to because their food sources are more dispersed and not as good, you know, so they might have to be more mobile. They're obviously capable of it because it's the same bird as in Australia, and they are a relatively recent import because there are
Australia.
no fossil bittern blooms. Okay, so there still might be something that's come within a few thousand years, obviously more ancient than, well, let's say the welcome swallow or the spurwing plover. So white-eye, you know, that's only 200 to 300 years or something. So
John, I can mention something about that because we used to have our own species of bittern, the New Zealand bittern, which is actually a relative of the little bittern, which is in Australia. And the little bittern from Australia was about 30 centimetres in size. But the New Zealand bittern was much bigger, it was 53.
Right.
And which is still smaller than the Australasian bittern.
Yeah.
So originally we've had that New Zealand bittern for a long time. It's come to New Zealand and got bigger. And then we've had the Australasian bittern come over, probably in the last 1,000 years.
Yeah.
But we sometimes get the Australian little bittern coming over. So if you see a bittern about this big,
Okay.
please tell Birds New Zealand, we'd love to know. So they're all, it's interesting how they basically become their own species of isolation.
Yeah. So the, you know, the bittern came over, the Australasian bittern came over to a land of wetlands. And so they found it to their liking. But what had been there before, they're probably going through, obviously our New Zealand little bittern, but there's probably as-bills going around as well. As-bills probably were the prime predator, avian predator in wetlands, wasn't it?
That's right, there seemed to be more diversity back then.
Yeah, there were more ducks, there were more there were geese and all sorts of things, yes, right.
John, you know down in Miranda, where you've got the bird sanctuary there,
Yeah.
have they done much of a study on the bittern down there?
Ian might answer that more, but I think bittern are an occasional visitor there. It's not really prime bittern territory, but they have been seen. I think it's just an occasional visitor.
That's right. It's not the ideal habitat is railroad, and we're finding bitterns in places like middle of paddocks and sort of marginal habitat, because one of the issues that we think is contributing to low breeding success is the habitat's just not good enough. What's there? So we're finding all these emaciated birds in farm paddocks and places like that where they normally wouldn't be, because they're having to disperse and find food. And the wetlands that we have are not good enough compared to what we would.
So that photo of that Matuku with that lovely big eel there, that's fine. The eel gives you a lot of calories, but they often are eating gambusia, mosquito fish. That's like us eating sort of a quarter of a peanut every 5 minutes or something. You know? Very little, a lot of effort to get not much return with some of these other food sources.
Is it not similar to the UK breed?
Yes, it's quite similar. So there's only, I think, about half a dozen or so big bitterns like this. There's many other smaller ones throughout the world, but the American bittern, the Eurasian bittern, I think it's called, the one that they have in the UK, and that's had quite a turnaround because its numbers were, I think, in almost the single figures for a while, but with what they've done with their wetlands and reservoirs and that, their numbers have gone up, And I think another advantage they have, we've probably got a bad male-female ratio because we've got so many, the females on the nest, just like our kaka, like a lot of our species are whole nesting, it's the females that get hammered, whereas in the UK, probably a lot of the species are used to whatever predators are around, and they're not quite so vulnerable in that regard, you know, because they're having some booming success there,
Because they look extremely similar to the UK, but
Yep.
Just a question on food, and in particular how to improve the food that's available in them. Is there simple, straightforward, easy ways to do that people can learn about and think, oh, I could help with that? Or is it more a bigger habitat requirement to work with?
I think it's got to be a bigger, I mean, you could breed frogs and release them in places. You could you know, try and get rid of the koi carp and the rudd and tench and that, but you know, that's not something we can easily do. You might say that our eel exports aren't helping this bird. There's something like, I think, it's like 20,000 or tonnes of eel are exported, and that's not helping. You know, most of those are coming from the Waikato wetland areas and that, yeah, so
Are they
that doesn't
separately
help.
farming them, or are they?
Oh no, that's just
Taking them
wild
out?
capture, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So the kahu, are they an increasing problem of predation?
Well, there seems to be a definite problem with this species, and I think it's being recognised more and more that yes, they are a significant factor, you know, because they readily can fly over all the wetlands, and I mean their whole ethos is to be able to see things from above, you know, so they could see a nest or something suspicious.
Are the bitterns a bit safer hiding in the raupo?
I think raupo is probably better than some of the places. I mean, some of them are nesting in small sedges and things, yes. People I was talking with today, they were saying that some of their successful nests were just further back from the sedges and that under low manuka. You know, so you go from your sedges and raupo into that, so some of those. So that against aerial predators, yeah, that's more useful. Well, I think I've rushed through that.
John, some of the pictures, you know, you had a nice one with Bittern standing.
Yeah.
I mean, how was that photo taken? Has it seen the photographer and frozen, or is with long lenses?
Probably most of those ain't the long lens, yeah.
They're just waiting for them to come out and show themselves.
Yeah. Here tonight, is there? How many people have not seen a bittern? Yeah. I think that's right.
Who's not heard of it?
I have now.
Well, it's a bit like this.
Apart from that little chatter that they make.
Oh, not nest. That's really, I've never heard that. That's close to the nest, but this low frequencies travel over a great area.
Okay,
And
One of the person who's starting a PhD down at Dunedin, one of her hopes was to be able to catch enough bittern, female bittern, and just say, is there any female vocalisation? Because that's, you know, what we know of is the male, because that can carry for 2 or 3 kilometres. But are the females vocal as well? What we heard on that little clip there was just the chicks calling. But do the females vocalise? Don't know. There's more unknown about bittern than many species because their habitat is that much more difficult for us to get into.
General noise pollution probably would also, I mean, it might appear to be quiet, but you've got like Canada geese and you've got the road and just affecting the distance that the booming would.
Yeah, for some wetlands, probably, you're right,
John, how would the habitat in Australia compare to that here?
Okay, one of the places that the bitterns are doing very well in Australia is in the rice fields. So they've got huge areas in rice, and so it's an ideal habitat for them. It's wet, there'll be frogs, there'll be snakes, there'll be fish, and they're doing very well there. And it's ridiculously easy to count them there. You just get down to the top of the grass level, and the rice stretches, hundreds of metres and all the same height. And they even bother to put drones over there, but you think, why bother? You could just stand and count them. Paul?
Sorry, stretching one.
Oh, right.
And of course in Australia there's many aerial predators, I mean far more than just our one Australasian harrier. So it can't be the main.
Oh no, I mean, they've got foxes to connect, they've got lizards, goannas and monitor lizards, they've got all sorts of snakes, they've got all sorts of things that they have to contend with that we don't. George Gray notwithstanding, he tried to bring foxes here, but that fortunately didn't succeed. Yeah.
So, John, there must be genetic memory there of watching out for predators of all sorts, so ground predators as well as aerial ones, and their history in Australasia.
Yeah. And I suppose some of the, definitely some of the ones that they have to contend with there are also animals that can hunt at night and use scent. So whether you're a lizard or a snake, scent's important to hunt your prey. But the reality is that perhaps when you subject any population to too many stresses, it's hard. Breeding success goes down. So, and as calves that are probably making a very significant inroad into the population. Yeah.
John, I should mention that one of the biggest issues every year is actually duck hunters shooting bittern. And it seems to happen, it's probably not obviously reported as much as it happens, but it seems to happen every year. There's a case of it, which comes in the media, but it obviously happens all the time. And it's usually sort of mid-morning after they've had a bit too much to drink. They just shoot anything they see, because you cannot really mistake a bittern if you see them on a flight for any other bird, apart from a kahu, which you should not be shooting anyway. So it is one of the, you listed the threats, but that is one of them. Historically, it's been even bigger because you used to be able to shoot them back in the day, but I'm sure it still happens. And with Birds New Zealand, whenever I hear of it, I make a big song and dance about it because it shouldn't happen. But we seem to have a lot of duck hunters in New Zealand who basically have practically got poo for brains, shit for brains, and a really bad attitude towards conservation.
The organisation Ducks Unlimited is actually quite pro protecting a lot of our native species, and there's a lot of them are breeders, and they're giving articles on bittern. Emma Williams at one stage was on the board, So, but that I guess is just a small selection of the.
It's a very sort of gradual osmosis of any sort of conservation thinking, because a lot of them just don't care.
True.
Has there ever been a successful prosecution?
No. Basically, people can get away with shooting a lot of things and never be prosecuted. There was a gentleman, for example, who shot a pelican in Canterbury in the 1970s, and his excuse was, I thought it was a white swan. But you can't shoot a nude swan either.
No.
So there's always, we're very poor as far as prosecution in New Zealand. We're terrible at it. And because of that, people just get away with it.
So who takes the prosecution? What government?
It's usually DOC.
It's DOC.
That's it. I mean, a lot of these things are never reported. Certainly duck hunters don't fess up on their fellow duck hunters. It'd be good if they did, but it tends not to happen. And then there's often little technicalities, and they're always soft. You can be prosecuted, you pay $20,000 fine, but no one ever does. And sometimes it's shooting quite rare, possibly endangered birds. A lot of vagrant birds get killed as well. In fact, for example, all the pelicans were shot. That was what was mentioned, and all of a sudden none of them were here, and one of them was shot. It's very hard to mistake a pelican for anything else than a pelican, but people do it. And it's just like shags as well. People, there's a book called The Shag Menace, and when you read it, it's like a book from the 19th century, but it was actually produced in 1945, and people still believe in that, and they shoot shags.
Fishermen.
Because they eat fish.
He was shooting the shags in order to save the trout that he believed the shags were eating.
That's right, but the shag was actually eating the eels, which
Yes.
ate the trout.
Yes,
So it's crazy thinking.
yes.
John, what's the minimum habitat size that you need for?
I don't think that's known either. I'm hoping that as more people do the sort of stuff that I was referring to, that we'll start getting an idea. For what it was worth, the best we've had in this particular wetland of 160, 170 hectares were 7 territorial males. So if they all had a female, you know, you could work that out, but we don't know that. We know that on several of the years we've recorded, we've had 7 territorial males there. So that would be 20 odd hectares, 20, 30, whatever.
And the males attract the females, do
Yeah, yeah. That booming is said to sort of, you know, announce their presence, but from that video there, it seems the female didn't think too much of it.
Do some of them hang out in mangroves?
Yeah, they do go in mangroves, and apparently one of the things is the younger birds are often seen, where you've got wetlands that sort of merge into mangroves, and the younger birds are often seen there, and they're not eating eels, they're eating crabs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, that could be sort of not a last resort, but you know, something they have gone to, because we don't have the big raupo beds and the other things. I'll just see if I get that, whether mangroves were...
Yes, mangroves was there, ever seen?
Oh yes, okay. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th one along. Oh, I could have looked here, couldn't I? So there, that's mangrove. Yeah, that's where they've been seen. You know.
Marina.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Mariner,
Yeah, Marina. Marina.
yeah. Mariner.
Ocean.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you.
Let's give John a... Thank you very much, John. Marvellous talk. This is such an interesting bird, and John's been at it for years. Once he gets a project going, he just keeps at it. Look at Ark in the Park and several others. Habitat to Hinga. So it really goes for it. I'm so pleased that when, well, on my little way, I started off Matuku Reserve next to where I live. We had a debate about what we should call it in the early days, in 1978, 1979. Forest and Bird Central Auckland branch, that's all that existed then, was all maybe Te Hinga Reserve, Te Hinga Forest and Bird, Te Hinga Preserve, I don't know where you are, but I stuck up for the Bittern. I thought we need an iconic species, so I said Matuku, it's got to be, so everybody agreed, so I'm so pleased it's Matuku Reserve, but it was wider than that. But look, you can be assured that this is going to go somewhere, this project, because if John's behind it, things always get done. Just give them the support and it'll happen. Thank you, John, again.